Hey friends, welcome to the Arable Leader Podcast, and today we're going to talk about spiritual capital. And I know that this should be the easiest of all capitals for me to talk about, because I have a background as a man of faith and a background of being a pastor of a church, and so many of you will know that spiritual capital is definitely in my wheelhouse. And yet, I think this might be the most difficult conversation I've had, because we have committed to and have no desire to proselytize a whole bunch of stuff to you, to impose upon you our spiritual and religious beliefs. But we do want to unpack this thing, this mystery, that there is something in us and beyond us that we can't always put our finger on. This is the Arable Leader Podcast. I'm Karl Martin, and we're exploring true, brave, kind, curious leadership, leading from your soul. So let's talk about spiritual capital. I want to invite my friend JP, who's going to ask me some questions. I have absolutely no idea what he's going to ask me, so I don't know where this thing is going to go. So welcome, JP. It's great to have you with us.
It's great to be on today, Karl, and I'm excited to have this unique and should be completely easy and not challenging at all sort of conversation.
Great, go.
Awesome. So I think maybe a good place to start is just to try to get a definition of this idea of spiritual. What does it mean to be spiritual? When we talk about spirituality, there's a lot of different ideas, and you do hear that, phrasing, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. You hear a lot of that sort of terminology in the world. Yeah. Fundamentally, pre-belief system, what does it just mean to be spiritual and to have a spirit?
Well, I don't think that there are some people who are spiritual and some people who are not spiritual. I think everyone is spiritual. It's just a case of whether you're alive to it or not, whether you understand it or not. There is a part of us that is beyond body, mind, emotion. There is a part of us that is mystery and wonder. There is part of us that will never get to the end of understanding who we are. And in essence, I think that is the fact that you are created by something beyond you and created for something beyond you. And that in our better moments, we recognize that there is more to life than just the things that we can see, touch, feel, or even go after. There is wonder, there is mystery, and there is spiritual. I have a spirit. And it's more than just, he's plucky, or he's passionate, or there is, and it's more even than the essence of me. There is a spirit that is gifted to me, that is supposed to connect with the spiritual part of this world. That was very enigmatic, but that's what I think we're talking about.
That's really interesting. I wasn't going to ask this, but because of where you took us, I want to bring this question into play. As you know, I work in the marketing space, and that space for the better part of 6 decades has been all about understanding human psychology. It's been about understanding what drives people and helps people make decisions. There's a reliance upon, you have very famous and maybe even of questionable ethics. You've got the kind of the Bernays view on things of here's how we manipulate people into doing what we want them to do. Now, hopefully we can have a more ethical approach to marketing as well. The reason I bring that up is I've seen a lot in this world of content and triggering people's dopamine receptors and getting people to make decisions. And we condition society with technology. I'm really curious about this, what I've seen kind of start to break through, where people are saying, I feel like there's more to me than just these layers of my psychology, of my physiology. And I wonder if maybe that the marketers have not accounted for this other level of perception. What is it that people are noticing when they feel that sort of that lack, when they feel that I know that there's more to me than this? Is that a spiritual perception? Is that what you think that is? What's at play there?
Yeah, I think it doesn't really matter how you label it, but I think there is a growing acceptance. I don't know. I've not done the marketing. I think there is a growing acceptance that there is something that you can't quite put your finger on in a human being, in the connections between human beings, in what is going on in a room that is beyond science. It's beyond neuroscience. It's beyond understanding emotions or chemicals. There is something about the environment that we've been brought into. There is something about the people that we are in essence that is more, that is mystery, that is wonder, that is a journey of discovery. And I, because of where I come from in my belief system, would say that you and I are created with a spiritual responder mechanism within inside us. And that we are connected to that other, and we're connected to one another. And so whether we call it instinct or intuition or wonder or questioning or skeptical curiosity, there is something other than what you can measure, what you can touch, which doesn't, by the way, deny all the scientific stuff. It doesn't deny the physiological stuff. It doesn't deny the chemical stuff. It is just something further that people throughout millennia have recognized. That's why we have religion. That's why we worship things. That's why we become obsessed with things. That's why we become fans of things. That's why we go on adventures. That's why we don't settle. It's because there is more. And I don't think that we pay enough attention to it in leadership and in business.
It's so fascinating that you bring up the history element too, because there is this sort of, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to kind of look at society and see this kind of this arrogance about where we are. Oh, we're at the height of technological progress. We're at the height of intellectual prowess. Humanity's never been, look at those people 1,000 years ago. What did they know? Look at those people 2,000 years. And so we kind of demean our ancestors and their worldview and the way they saw the world. And yet a lot of what Arable uses in our leadership consultancy, these tools are rooted in traditions that are much older, that predate us. It's ancient wisdom. So go into a little bit of the connection between ancient wisdom and what does it have to speak to us today?
Well, I mean, yes, maybe the reality is that we've never been as rich and we've never been as poor. That the world is going so fast that we have become victims to the speed of the world. We have made an idol of progress. And what if that is not always to our betterment? Which doesn't, I don't think it makes me a Luddite. So hold back on the, I'm well up for embracing all new ideas and all new concepts and wrestling those things to the ground. But I'm not sure that human society is at its best because we have embraced everything that is new, everything that is fast, everything that is shinier. And if we believe we have reached the pinnacle of human experience and understanding, it might also be true that we've reached the pit of that as well. I mean, our inhumanity to one another, our inability to get along with one another, our polarization in culture, the wars and rumors of wars, our inability to deal with pandemics, all that stuff doesn't tell me that we have arrived, right? It tells me that we will never arrive. It tells me that there will always be more to plumb. It tells me that I think that moving forward is going to be a combination of embracing modern progress and embracing ancient wisdom. By the way, wisdom is a word that is out of vogue right now, but needs to come back into vogue very quickly, because it is. I think wisdom is the culmination of information, knowledge, understanding, and application, and it is the humble belief that there is always more.
Wow.
The humble belief there is something beyond. The humble belief that I am not the sole arbiter of truth. and it is distinctly lacking in our culture and our cultures right now.
That is so profound. You highlighted how
Is it? It was just a talk that I was making to
no, well,
myself.
I think that was brilliant. I mean, I really do. And you highlighted a second ago how spirituality, spirit, is not just something within us. It's that which connects us
Yeah.
to things around us and to the people specifically around us. So when you talk
Yes.
about a society that is technologically progressed, that is perhaps intellectually progressed, there's more
Yes.
information available to us than ever, and yet we
Yes.
are also seeing the consequence of spiritual poverty or impoverishment in that we are
Yes.
weirdly disconnected from each other, that we are so
That's right.
polarized, that there's a disconnecting force. So if we were to kind of go into spiritual capital, when we think about
Yeah.
spiritual poverty versus spiritual wealth, is there something about spiritual
Well,
wealth that is inherently connected?
Yes. Pause. Hold that question for a
Okay.
second, because I want to make sure that we don't, and this is really important, that we don't conflate spirituality with religion. Because I think what we do is we quickly dismiss the concept of spirituality. And by the way, spirituality is not religion. It just is not so connected, superglued to religion.
Right.
What we do with spirituality, the moment that it becomes enigmatic, the moment that it becomes kind of off balance, liminal, a journey and a search, a non-static space, we want to create something ordered and systemic around it. And very quickly when we do that, we create a religion, and then we take the life out of the spirituality. And so it becomes rules and regulations, and you shall not, and conformities. And you've missed the mystery, the wonder, the connection, the something more, the spirit on spirit, the we'll never come to the end of this, the curiosity that is encapsulated in that concept of spirituality. And we've made it a religion which destroys the whole relational piece that it was originally attempting to create.
Yeah, that's
Sorry,
huge.
talk to me about the question you asked, because now I've forgotten.
Well, no. I mean, I think that's part of it. Because obviously, spirituality doesn't, as you said, doesn't exclude religion, but
No,
it doesn't. But it's not just religion. And
that's right.
if it just becomes religion, then it becomes lifeless. And
That's
you
right.
remove that mystery, you remove that curiosity. And so maybe that is an answer to the question inadvertently. When you remove curiosity from the equation, it is
Yes,
very easy to remove connection, because as soon as I no longer am interested in what the
that's right.
other can
That's
teach
right.
me, it's hard
Yeah.
for me to be connected to this person.
Yes.
We do see a lot of that right now, where there is this sort of, we're entrenched in our walls of information and in our echo chambers of information and our algorithms that curate more and more of what we already basically think. And so then it's much more difficult to connect to people who think differently. I meet a lot of people in London from a lot of different places and with a lot of different faith backgrounds and spiritual backgrounds. And I'm always fascinated at how little I actually know and how much there is to learn from these people. What is the connection of curiosity to spirituality? It's something you talk about a lot, curiosity.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think the essence of spiritual capital, particularly in the marketplace, is, well, the blessing of it is to be able to say, do you know, there is a longer game here. There's a deeper play here. There is something more here than just profit here. There is something more than just my idea here. There is something more than just my gain here. There is something that is supposed to go longer than me. There is something that's supposed to go wider than me.
Wow.
It's supposed to bless people around me. There is something that is supposed to go deeper than me, because I've got to get to a depth of understanding and of conversation with myself and others, which releases that stuff, which enables us to go longer and deeper and wider. And so curiosity is contingent on humility.
Wow.
And generosity. It's contingent on you saying, I don't know it all. I'll never know it all. I think I'm right and I might not be. I have opinions that might not be counsel. And a willingness to submit that into the stew of others' ideas and be confident about the things that you're confident about without putting a fence around them and not allowing them to be argued with or debated around. And so I'm not at all worried. You know, let's get really frank. You know, I'm a passionate Jesus following Christian. I don't feel the need to walk around telling everyone that the whole time. I don't feel the need to try and persuade every client, nor would I be able to. I get thrown out of court if I did so. I don't feel the need to defend the Bible or to get on Facebook and become an agitator for faith, because I think if you create spiritual space, questions and curiosities, the God that I think is, the God that made people, the God that created you with a spiritual responder mechanism is more than able to show up and defend himself, prove himself, reveal himself in ways that are way beyond the ways in which religion dictates that he's going to. And so creating space for that in a business, in a relationship, in a family, actually, I think is the essence of what it means to be on a human journey together. And I think is a game changer.
There's two questions that come up for me instantly there. Very quickly, I just don't want to forget this. This idea of a spiritual responder mechanism, or that, you know, it's everything we're talking about. It's that perception. But how does one, wherever they sit on the spectrum of beliefs or religion, how does one cultivate that or strengthen that spiritual responder mechanism, that perception, that ability to see the more that's going on, and maybe even as a leader, cultivate that ability to help others see that there's more going on? And can you speak to that a little bit?
I mean, I can't prove this to anyone, nor would I want to try, really. But I think the evidence of this thing, which is difficult to put our finger on, is all around us. You know, why do I get emotional when I see great acts of human generosity? Why do I get moved by acts of sacrifice? Why, when I walk in the world, do I sometimes just get my breath taken away by the wonder of the creativity and what caused there to be something other than nothing, and on all those things that come to almost every human being at different stages in their life and suddenly arrest them. That, I think, is the evidence of just the aliveness of that spiritual responder mechanism, which is designed to respond to something. What is it in those human connections that are just beyond the fact that I love that person? What is it? You know, there is so much wonder and mystery in the world, and so I think it is that. How do you cultivate that spiritual muscle? I think it's as much being aware of it than it is anything else, and accepting it. I think that the world that we live in is going so fast and with so much information and so much stress that we have become numb to the reality, which isn't it weird that the things that seem unreal might just be the most real things in our world?
Wow.
And the things that are real might actually be the most unreal things in our world. You know, we've made the material stuff so real for us, and it's so transitory. And we've made the unreal thing, like, the weirdy stuff, the mysteries, the wonder, the spirituality, the faith stuff. We've made that unreal, and it just might be the most real stuff in our world. And the world around us has numbed us to that because of the pace and stress and busyness and noise. And so I think recapturing some of the reality is about pausing and being able to shut off some of that noise and becoming aware of the brilliance inside of you and the creativity inside of you and the otherness inside of you and the brilliance and the creativity and the design inside of someone else and the connectivity of those two things and the questions that we'll never find answers to, but the very pursuit of those questions makes us more human and more interesting and takes us on an adventure. And I think it's those kind of conversations, the ability to breathe and stop and choose and wonder and ask, which makes me sound like a hippie. I am a million miles from being a hippie, but I think it brings a whole bunch more beauty and wonder into this world and actually helps us solve the very problems of culture and leadership that we're always trying to solve, because they're effectively human relational problems.
Okay, so let's take that for a second and chase
this
down.
This is the weirdest podcast I've ever done.
I love where it's going. I think this is fascinating, to be honest, because I think there's something about this that's important, and there's not very many leaders I can think of and I'm talking about business leaders in secular spaces that don't have that almost imperceptible but definitely perceptible depth and an internal pace that seems to be walking at a different rhythm than the rest of this kind of chaos and busyness that you're describing. Right. They are walking at a different pace. I'm not even necessarily saying slower, just different. It's grounded. Yeah. Yes.
Grounded, centered, ordered. There's an order in amongst the chaos, and I think this spiritual thing, this faith component, I would say faith, not fear component, enables us to order our days, and have a different perspective.
So let's talk about it in business. Let's talk about it. When we bring these kinds of concepts into boardrooms and we bring them into conversations about, everything that business owners are going to be talking about, profit, efficiency. How does a business leader or a leader of an organization cultivate spiritual capital without necessarily abstaining from the competition or abdicating the role as the responsibilities to make that business profitable? There's a traditional business expectation, but how does a business also get at that something more?
Yeah.
And maybe for you to even answer that question is too revealing. I'm not sure, but I would love to get your thoughts.
I essentially think that when you start to build on the spiritual capital that we all have and you start to prioritize it, you start to play to a different grid. It's not like any longer it's just profit, loss, make it happen, get it done, efficiency, execution, nor is it care, love people, be compassionate, be kind. There's a different grid, which is paradoxical and full of duality and dilemma, and that I think that's the nature of the world that we live in, and denying that doesn't help us. And so I refer you to the answer I gave earlier around. I kind of think it's a commitment to a longer, deeper, wider game. Simon Sinek talks about the infinite game and talks a little bit about game theory and finite and infinite games, and the games that are played for the moment, for quick return, and the games that are played which will last and create a legacy and will still be standing and are a bigger conversation and are playing in a blue ocean, not a red ocean. And I think it's in this area that we're talking. There is, for those who are building into their spiritual capital, there is a drive towards generosity of spirit, of thinking, and of material things that does not make sense if you dial down the spiritual capital. It makes sense only if you believe there is something more, something beyond, a bigger purpose, a longer game. And we are created for more than just this moment, this myopic moment. And so that takes a lot of convincing, but here's the deal. There is something about the businesses that I work with and the people that I coach who have that perspective that makes them unbreakable.
Wow.
That makes them unoffendable. That makes them what Nassim Taleb would call anti-fragile, because the more pressure you put on them, the more they actually prosper, because they're just not playing to the old grid, they're playing to a new grid. So the market can come and go. You can fire me or not fire me. You can abuse me in the press or not abuse me in the press. And it's not that I'm not listening and I'm not growing, I'm not learning. I am unaffected as to the direction of my travel and the long-term ambition of my life by those things. I am affected by something deeper and something which is bigger, wider, and longer.
That is fascinating.
But even when someone offends me or cuts me up or destroy or even tries to destroy me, the whole nature of understanding that there is something or someone, I would call it God, beyond, who is a judge and is a good judge, frees me from the need for vengeance, to sort it all out, and frees me, allows me to, even in the most heinous moments, forgive people because I understand the nature of forgiveness, and I have been forgiven because I'm a screw up as well, and I'm both beautiful and broken, and I don't deserve to win at everything or to get everything, and therefore I'm free to employ that into other people's lives and to give people the benefit of the doubt and assume clumsy and not malice. It's just a game changer for me to have to understand that this part of me, this spiritual part of me, which would seem like an additional extra to a cool life, is actually the most important part of me. It's who I am and how I'm created to be.
Yeah, it's fundamental. It's that which can't be compromised in the same way. Someone can assault my senses, someone can insult my intelligence, someone can assault my psychology. We see mental illness, but there's a difference.
Totally.
In this kind of, that's, but you're mentioning this, all of the great wisdom teachers throughout the centuries in spiritual traditions seem to have this interesting relationship with suffering, with challenge, with difficulty, and every single one of them that we respect, they addressed it head on. They didn't turn and flee from it. And similarly, they didn't necessarily go out of their way to inflict it. In fact, they seem to embrace what came their way and know that there was something that you're speaking to, something timeless that can survive through that. That to me seems like a incredibly useful skill in business and in industry where things are cutthroat and people do have agendas and there is a lot of vitriol and violent words or even violent actions coming your way. If I want to become someone who does have that capacity, who does have that spiritual capital, what am I doing or not doing? I mean, you've spoken to pace. Is there something else that I can do to become the kind of person for whom offense isn't taken, who can withstand that sort of heat and challenge and pressure? How do I build that?
Yeah, I mean, it's massive, isn't it? I mean, it feels to me like we have a culture that is obsessed with comfort. We've built our whole culture around becoming comfortable. I mean, when people get to my age of life, we're supposed to have kind of paid the mortgage off, sent the kids through school, have reached the zenith of our career life, and it's kind of a coast downhill the other side of it, and we've talked a number of times about the fact that nothing grows in a comfort zone.
Wow.
And actually things go to rest or get restored or die in a comfort zone. The place that you grow is in a place of, rub, of a place of disruption, of a place where difficulty comes at you. The psychologists talk about liminal space, off balance, threshold space, when we don't know quite. It's not static state where we grow. And so the nature of this world where our businesses grow and our leadership grows was what the Christian faith would call death and resurrection. It's suffering and victory. And yet we want to avoid suffering, right? which I understand totally, because no one wants to suffer, right? No one wants to experience loss. But it's suffering and loss that form us and grow us and creates perseverance and creates character and creates the kind of people that we might become. If you can't experience that kind of under pressure, what is real about you does not get revealed. And if what is real about you cannot be revealed, you can never become the kind of leader that you might want to become, and you can never leave the kind of legacy that you want to leave. So as far as embracing suffering, don't run from it. Don't run from difficulty. Do hard things. One of the things that I do on literally a daily basis is when I'm faced with something that's really hard, that I find really challenging, that I can't get my head around, I can't think, or something physical that I don't want to do, I run towards it because I know it's going to create something that I don't even know what it's going to create. It's going to create something new. It's going to grow some muscles. It's going to help me. And actually, I think I was reading an article the other day where scientists are saying that actually the doing of hard things does something in the brain that enables you to live longer. So that's wow. Good, right? So I do think that the suffering thing and the pursuit of suffering and the pursuit of difficulty, and that I will not give up, just because it's part of life, isn't it? It's part of failure is part of life. I was talking to a financial advisor the other day, who was talking about the market and stocks, and over time, let the downs be the downs and the ups be the. Don't panic and freak out and tap out and walk away. This is the nature of the world that we live in, and actually the reality is, I grow more in the death parts than I do in the resurrection parts. I become more honed to be the person that I might be. So embrace. I don't know if this is helping at all. I hope this is helping.
Great.
Embrace
this is great.
those. This is part of your spiritual journey. To die to ego, to die to some of your ambitions, and to rise and live into some new expression of who you might be, and some new opportunities that you might grab hold of.
There's that is so good, because there is that. I think about that little story. It's so funny. I wasn't even thinking about this podcast, but I was just thinking about that little story about the farmer who gets asked by a bunch of different people, "Oh, you must be miserable now. Your son has been taken, or your land has been taken," and then he basically responds, "It remains to be seen." And then his son comes back, and he brings with him a whole grouping of new people and new land and new opportunity, and you must be overjoyed. And he's like, "It remains to be seen." And there's that sort of, the oscillations of life come to him, and each time he just kind of stays at this steady, unattached state. It's not that it doesn't matter, but there's something of steadiness to him in this story. And as you know, my wife and I just had a baby. There's that like new pressure of life. This is our first time kind of experiencing this challenge. And it is very easy to get, to your point, myopic and focused on this is just what's happening right now, and to kind of move with the vicissitudes of life. There's something that you're describing here that seems to not say that you check out of your life or that you're disinterested, but more that you're able to stay steady through those ups and downs in the market, and you don't panic. And how many leaders do we have right now that can truly say they're that kind of steady?
Yeah.
we see people panicking right and left. The next thing, this new technology is going to completely change everything. And it's either going to be the best thing since sliced bread, or it's going to take over the world or whatever. You're seeing it constantly. The sense of societal panic. What would you speak to our collective fear? What would you speak to from spiritual capital? What would it speak to how society approaches change, which seems to be a big question mark on a lot of people's mind right now? What does spiritual capital say to that?
I think spiritual capital says, live for something longer than you, bigger than you, beyond you. Chase it with everything that you've got. Seek truth in every way that you can. And play the very thing that's right in front of you. And both of those things are true. Be content with loving the person in front of you. Be content with developing the person in front of you. Be content with the piece of work that you've got in front of you. And this is where it becomes incredibly paradoxical. And chase the wind. Chase the wind and play the thing in front of you. Chase the wind and play the thing in front of you. You will not be defined by what's in front of you. Your game is going to be played out over, I believe, way longer than your lifetime. What you leave behind, what you give to others, and which is why, of course, that those two capitals, relational and spiritual, are the only eternal capitals. Everything else is temporary, which is why you're supposed to invest up into these things. This is a mystery, but it's a mystery worth wrestling with, because if life is bigger than the 75, 80 or whatever years I'm allotted on this planet, and if it's bigger than me making enough money to buy a house and have some great holidays, and if it's bigger than that, then it's worth investing in the bigger stuff. At the same time, there's nothing wrong with enjoying life in front of you, enjoying what's played around you, loving your family well, using the resources to purchase a really cool open top sports car and a nice watch. Or there's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, people are precious, and yeah. So I think it's the both and you know what? The moment that you stop wrestling with it is the moment you kind of die inside.
Wow.
I think the moment that an organization stops wrestling with it is the moment that it loses its soul. The moment that an organization stops wrestling with the dilemma of we've got to make profit and we've got to care for people and people are our profit. The moment that we stop wrestling with that conundrum that cannot ultimately be squared is the moment that we lose our soul, and the moment that we are on a downward spiral to becoming the organization we don't want to be part of. And so it is in the wrestle, it is in the tension of we are human beings and we are spiritual beings.
How would you speak to, there's two questions. How would you speak to a person who is feeling disconnected from that deeper place, is feeling disconnected from spiritual capital, is aware of that these things are important, but is in a juncture in their life where it's just I can't seem to get there. I can't seem to find that place in myself. But I would like to try. How would you speak to that person? And then the same thing, to your point, to an organization. It's like, man, we've lost our sense of soul. We've lost our way. We're off course, and we want to correct. How do we get right?
We enthrone certain parts of our. We enthrone certain parts of our lives. Some of us enthrone our minds. Our minds become God. Really, if we can't think it, it can't be. Wow, really. Because your mind's going to develop and your mind's going to change, and other people think different things. Are you really the sole arbiter of truth? Our feelings become God, right? So there's a generation are people who are more impulsed by feeling than a previous generation. I feel this thing. And you can often tell that by the way that people start their sentences, right? I think, I feel, my instinct is, will show you where people's, the core of their operating comes from. And then there are others who are just gut people. Their instinct is to go forward people. And so we enthrone these things. And I feel like the only way to fully step into the reality of spiritual capital and to start investing there is to dethrone those things and to say, my mind is not God or all that. My feelings will let me down and lie to me. My instincts have been wrong often, but somewhere in there is something more that I want to make space for. And so it's like crossing a Rubicon that says, it's not that I'm going to not use my mind or my feelings. They're all good witnesses, but they're not ultimately the authority of everything. Is there a way of me, like crossing a Rubicon and deciding I am a spiritual being and this is a spiritual world? There is more to life than I have bargained on and bet on. Therefore, I'm going to start to read meetings and situations and people and opportunities and deals and relationships. I'm going to start to read those things through the lens of this is a spiritual world and I'm a spiritual being. And the moment you become alive to that, aware of that, conscious of that, you begin to live and think with a different grid. And it's a total game changer. It's like the lenses have been changed in your glasses, and you start to see the world differently. And every place that you have argued away things rationally, or you've argued away things emotionally, or you've argued away things, you're going to start to see things that make no sense according to a non-spiritual grid, but start to make some sense according to a spiritual grid. And then you stand a chance of living for a longer game in a deeper way with a wider perspective.
So much of what you just said is brilliant. Something that stands out, when you're dethroning these other things and you're left with that making of space, that empty, but it's not empty space. It's like something there can surprise you.
Totally.
There's something that happens on your own, maybe in time that you're spending, whatever your practice is, your meditation or your reflection. That can also happen in groups of people. That can happen in boardrooms. That happens where the space is made because we've dethroned our underlying assumptions.
That's right. That's exactly right.
This
is where we've so often in religion done a disservice to God as I understand him, or however you describe him. I think we have been so fearful of being able to frame, according to our minds, the God that we think is, that we boxed him in and made him conform to a way of operating. God is a God who's more than able to fill space. I think as I read the scriptures that he's not a bully, that he's not going to impose himself where there is no space. So the moment that you make space spiritually for him to reveal things, to shine a torch on certain ways of operating and being, is the moment that things become very clear to us. But it's only going to happen if you take that kind of Rubicon step and say, I'm a spiritual being, there's a spiritual world. My business is not, it's not just the material world that we're living in. There is some spiritual transactions that go on here all the time.
We definitely don't seem to live in a society that is comfortable or excited to make space. It definitely feels crowded. There's a lot going on. Everybody's answering the default question of how you doing with busy. It's rare that you see that happen. And it's rare that you see that happening in companies. It's rare that you see companies making space to just say, are we on course? What are we not seeing? So yeah, I think that applies at many levels, what you're talking about, this making of space. I've got one last question for you, and
my friend.
I think we're probably up to almost an hour, which is crazy that we've been talking this long. But this question is just it's maybe it's a bit cliche, but I would love to get. I still think it could be helpful. So if you could leave our listeners with one practice or mindset shift to increase their spiritual capital, to invest in their spiritual capital, one simple thing they could do or not do, what would it be? What would you say to them?
I think, following on from the making space thing, I would encourage people to create moments in the day, and I like the beginning of the day, to shut out the noise and activity of the day, to allow space for what is real to come into your mind and into, I would say, into your heart as well. Because otherwise what happens is we become a victim of the agendas and the noise and the clamors of the urgent, and we don't get to go at our days. We get to that we allow our days to come at us. Now, it is in the quiet space, I mean literally quiet space, that the thoughts and wonders and curiosities and questions are allowed to rise up. And I think in those questions, in following the trail of those questions, in following the trail of those conversations with ourselves, we get to recognize our spirituality and to approach the world with, I'm a spiritual being, this is a spiritual world. It's also a material world, and I'm a material being, so let's not forget that. Let's not become sort of weirdy. But I think unless you actually make room for the spiritual part of your life, the essence of your life, it will be drowned out by every other part of life. So it is the silent stuff.
Well, I don't know that we could end on a more powerful concept than that. I think making space might be exactly what a lot of people listening today would just feel and sense, like, man, I need that. I need that today. So that's brilliant, Karl. Thank you.
You've been watching The Arable Leader with Karl Martin. Subscribe for more episodes with great leaders. And you can also listen to The Arable Leader wherever you get your podcasts. For more resources for leading in a healthy way, visit arableco.com and check out Karl's new book, The Cave, the Road, the Table, and the Fire.